Hello and welcome to Talkernate History, the podcast where we,
Matt
and Max, talk about works of alternate history scenarios, and history in general. This episode, we're going to talk about Desert Storm.
Desert Storm. What a fascinating conflict.
Gulf War I.
I mean, this isn't going to be a super long episode. There's not a whole lot of plausible divergences, but we certainly will talk about some. As the war was fought, as it was, the Iraqis weren't going to be repulsing the Allied invasion.
It's pretty overwhelming. Really.
Yeah. I mean, if you have to see a major difference, it's either because the air campaign just crippled
the highway of death.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that.
Kiowa helicopters just painting targets and just blown up.
Yeah, craziness.
Just a complete turkey shoot.
I mean, really, the way it would have to be different is as if the U.S. wasn't involved or something like that.
If it was just between Saudi Arabia and Iraq,
for instance. That would have been interesting, or like a coalition of Arab nations. Like they could see that being different, where they didn't have the willpower, or if like the U.K. was only involved, or France, not America, it would be different.
Quite unusual, but sure,
why not?
Just maybe to war game it up.
Maybe if there was a different. I remember one of those. I think this today in alternate histories, there was one where it was like talking about the Gulf War and like President Dukakis keeping America out of the Gulf War.
Huh. Okay. Sure.
Something like that.
All
yeah,
right.
That's where you see the major divergence. I mean, maybe the Iraqis do. You could see like maybe they do a little bit better or something like that. But the U.S. is going to win. I guess the big one would be if the U.S. pushed to Baghdad and just deposed Saddam Hussein. That would be the big one.
And that would be pretty crazy because this would be back in the early 90s. So, the world between when Saddam Hussein eventually was deposed and the 90s, very different. Like what the heck kind of world would you be living in at that point?
Yeah, because Saddam Hussein was like the go-to bad guy in the 1990s movies.
I mean...
You watch Hot Shots Part 2, who's a bad guy?
Or Naked Gun 1, he shows up in that film as well. Or at least I think he does. I mean, Gorbachev's in it. Muammar Gaddafi is in it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Saddam's in it too.
Yeah. No, but yeah, you'd have to see like an alternate version is like the U.S. not getting involved for some reason. And I don't see that not happening. Or if the U.S. took a different strategy, if they just attacked Kuwait into the occupied Kuwait instead of that big strike around, but they'd probably still win. But why would you do that when you can attack into the desert or whatever?
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not the biggest buff when it comes to the Gulf War. I mean, I was technically alive during it, but I had no real memory of it when it was happening. So it's still a little mysterious to me why it even happened in the first place.
Well, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, saying that for some reason Kuwait was like a province of Iraq, and they wanted the oil. But Kuwait has such big oil reserves; they're worried about Iraq trying to cut off the flow of oil and stuff like that. So. I mean, that's sort of the reason why, which is hard to see the U.S. not getting involved, going, okay, Iraq, you just take the oil.
Okay, sure. That's fine. Because the United States and Saudi Arabia, very closely tied back then.
Yeah, well, I think Saudi Arabia was afraid it was going to be next. That the next invasion was going to be Saudi Arabia and the oil fields it has in the eastern part of the country. So we got to unite together. Stop this Saddam Hussein.
This madman Saddam. So during the Gulf War, Saddam Hussein actually shot missiles into Israel.
He did, Scud missiles.
Yeah, because he wanted to alienate the Arab allies with on the U.S. side, because it's like, why are you fighting against me? I'm fighting Israel. Yep. So, but
they didn't work.
They did not work, though.
No,
obviously.
I mean, it's just hard to see a really strong divergence other than like Iran getting involved, but I don't really see that considering they just fought an 8-year war with Iraq.
And speaking of which, what about chemical weapons? What if chemical weapons were actually used against, I guess you could call them the Allies.
Yeah, that would be for clarity. Yeah, I think that would have probably resulted in the Saddam regime being deported.
Yeah, because it's like
deposed. You've been deported.
To Detroit.
to Monaco.
Oh, no.
We're sending you to Canada.
We're sending you to Andorra. But yeah, I mean, that would definitely mean that they were going to kick him out. That would be not acceptable.
No, absolutely. And if the Soviet Union didn't really come to the aid of Iraq, if they had, U.S. versus USSR settled in the Iraqi desert.
What a bizarre thing to go into a hot war over.
Yeah.
It's totally not
Exactly.
Because the Soviet Union had no money left. They were...
Yeah, well, 91, they're on the ropes. I mean,
Yeah.
it officially falls in 91.
The Berlin Wall had already fallen at that point.
Berlin Wall in 89, yeah.
You know, a lot of the Warsaw Pact countries...
The Warsaw Pact.
But, you know, the Soviet Union's falling apart at the seams at that point. So... Do you really want to get involved in another Afghanistan, but one that's like explicitly against America? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, no.
But maybe in a different world. But the Soviet Union's in a better, stronger state at that point.
Yeah, maybe. But other things have changed than before. It's
you can't just have that.
Yeah. The USSR Expeditionary Force going to protect holy Iraqi soil. Yeah, Saddam Hussein promised the mother of all battles. Well,
not so much.
Not the battle of all mothers.
Not the battle with, Mother Teresa.
Yeah. What if Mother Teresa led the Allied forces? But no, it's hard to see an outcome that's different. Like, maybe Saddam Hussein doesn't do it at all. Maybe sort of licks his wounds from the Iran-Iraq war. And that changes the 90s a lot because Iraq was just this pariah state during the 90s. The U.S. occasionally launched airstrikes because of various things. And
when did the gassing of the Kurds occur? After?
I think it was after.
That because George H.W. Bush said, people of Iraq, you should rise up against your leader, but then gave them no support.
Yeah,
once
no
they
support.
actually did.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Bay of Pigs kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With even less support. Just like verbal, emotional support. Yeah, emotional support. The Iraq War is the first Persian Gulf War is interesting because there's obviously it's just this insane air campaign. And if you watch, there was this documentary about tanks I watched from the 90s. We taped it in the 90s, and you watch it, and it's just like it had all this stuff from the Iraq War, and it's just like, this is the wave of the future. This is what war in the future is going to be, just like utter annihilation, tanks everywhere,
No insurgency at all.
Just
standing armies fighting one another.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's one of the last real standing army against standing army fights.
Yeah,
that in the Falklands,
Falklands.
The Falklands.
The Malvinas will always be Argentinian.
Las Malvinas. Yes. They put the Falkland Islands on their currency. It's like, here's the $10 Argentinian bill.
The 10 peso.
The 10 peso bill. Never forget.
Margaret Thatcher.
The Iron Lady. Is Gorbachev called her?
Yeah.
He's the one who made up that nickname.
The Iron Lady. Well, she was quite formidable.
Yeah. She was in that tank after all.
That's right. Yeah.
Don't mess with her.
Tough lady. What's interesting is, so you have this air campaign, just like this almost pure armor engagement in some ways. Mm-hmm. So if you like your M1 Abrams engagements, there's fighting there. But it's the last use of a battleship in combat.
No way.
Yeah, U.S. battleships bombarded the coast of Kuwait as a diversion.
Oh wow,
which is crazy.
That's so
like
nuts.
The last of the Iowa class ships. I think it was the USS Wisconsin actually bombarded with 16-inch guns or whatever on Kuwait.
Oh my goodness.
And that's a good segue into something that Max discovered.
Oh yes,
which is pretty awesome.
My cousin, back in the 1990s, he was older than me. He's about 10 years older than me, and he was alive. A child at the time, mm-hmm. and they used to make trading cards for everything back in the day. It started with baseball. Mm-hmm. There's Star Trek trading cards. There's everything. And apparently they made Desert Storm trading cards as well, which this is a real hoot here. There's pretty much everything, even tangentially related to the Gulf War, is in here.
Like Admiral Frank Kelso.
Yeah, remember him?
Yeah.
There's a card for camouflage, and it's just a guy with big wide eyes
with camouflage on his
with green paint on his face. That's not going to work so good in Iraq.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
The judicial system.
A trading card for the judicial system. It's got the American flag on it, and it's got a picture of the Supreme Court. Let's see. A unique feature of the U.S. government is the power of the judiciary granted by the case Marbury versus Madison. Oh, I'm so glad that this trading card about the Gulf War could inform me about United States district courts.
There's cards for all of the nations involved.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them, actually. Yeah. For instance, Sierra Leone, not really an integral part of the Gulf War, I would say.
No. It sent 200 troops. The mining of diamonds, bauxite, and gold is the most important, something that Leonardo DiCaprio would know about.
Oh,
Consider
yes.
his role in the movie Blood Diamond.
He plays a Rhodesian in that film. There's
A trading card for Luxembourg.
Yes.
A country I have been to, actually. It's a Grand Duchy. That's right.
Grand Duchy.
For Operation Desert Storm, Luxembourg supplied economic support. What does that mean?
Moral support.
Yeah.
So another thing about these cards is the maps.
Yeah.
They're terrible.
Yeah, the maps are not good.
They don't look, they're completely wrong. Like, Bahrain's map. All the countries are just, it's not even remotely correct.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with this plane?
The A6, the Prowler, it's a version of the A6 Intruder. Yeah, it's like jamming equipment. Here, my favorite card, my favorite out of all of them, is the one for the United States Coast Guard because it's got a sailing ship, like a sail ship on the front, like the USS Constitution,
like a triple master.
We're gonna sail this baby to the Persian Gulf, boys. Give them some of that old grape shot. Prepare a boarding party with cutlasses.
Beat to quarters.
It's like, why did you pick this? They even have a trading card for a Chinook helicopter, but why on God's green earth for the Coast Guard would they pick a sail ship?
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and it makes no sense.
They're really scraping the bottom of the barrel with some of these.
I mean, and you didn't even need this many because this is a big collection of trading cards. I mean, there's gotta be hundreds in there.
Hundreds. And this isn't even the whole set either. There's missing ones. So he's got all of these cards in plastic wraps, and then he's got a couple ones that have no cards in them, but they say what they're supposed to be. So, card 232.
A tornado, like a tornado plane. It's a British bomber.
Or card 222, the F-15.
Nice.
Didn't even have that one. That's a pretty famous one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just goofy. It's like, what are these? Trading cards. Now another trend that you don't see. Reserves. And it's just a picture of some people in patent tanks waving. Okay.
Just in case.
Because they're often called weekend warriors. Merrill McPeak. Anyone remember that guy?
No.
Richard Neal. Oh, Storm and Norman Schwarzkopf.
Now that guy I do
Colin
remember.
Powell. I do remember Colin Powell.
I've seen his picture in the National Portrait Gallery.
Who? Colin Powell?
Colin Powell, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
He's still around?
He's still around.
Norman Schwarzkopf isn't.
He voted for Obama, even though he's a Republican.
Canadian Executive Branch.
Very important. Extremely.
The Canadian National Anthem, a picture with a totem pole on the front.
Oh,
Canada, my Canada.
Oh,
jeez.
Here's a card.
Government. Just says Canadian system on it. This is amazing. This thing is a treasure trove right here. Okay. This may top the Coast Guard thing. The Iraqi system of government.
And there's a guy on a camel. Why?
That makes no... The Kuwait system.
What's that a picture of in the Kuwait system there?
I think it's some building from Kuwait City, probably. The emir rules through an appointed prime minister and a council of ministers. Legislative authority is shared by the emir and a 50-member national assembly.
So Kuwait is an emirate?
Kuwait's democratically elected legislature is unique amongst the Gulf nations, but the emir suspended the assembly on July the 3rd, 1986.
Hooray!
Kuwait enjoys a relatively free press, but freedom is highly restricted for non-Kuwaiti nationals.
Oh, dear.
George Herbert Walker Bush.
Yes. And his antagonist, his mortal enemy, Mikhail Gorbachev, right there.
His mortal. Nice. Gorby and George H.W.
Oh, my God.
Middle East history. Colonial.
Sykes-Picot. And speaking of bad maps, look at that map of Syria.
That map of Syria is terrible. You can't see this, so this doesn't have as much meaning for you as it does for us. But that map is bad.
Oh, don't worry. I'll scan them and I'll put them in the episode.
Lord have mercy. That's right, because Syria was actually a member of the coalition.
Yeah. Surprisingly, even though they were on the side of the Soviet Union for so much of history, they joined with America in this fight
to liberate.
Yitzhak
Shamir, Prime Minister of Israel at the time.
Shemazel.
Yeah, he was from Poland. He moved to Israel.
Really?
Shamir was not his original birth name, as many people who came from Poland and other places changed their name.
Interesting. Huh.
Long story short, these cards are ridiculous.
Yeah, this is a great treasure. I'm really glad that I own
It's
these.
stuff like this that you really treasure when you can find it.
Yeah. Just such a time capsule. That's really what the Gulf War is.
Yeah.
It was a big deal at the time, but nowadays it's become very much a footnote.
Yeah, like the Falklands, as we
The
talked about
Falklands.
earlier. It's kind of a joke almost, like in Britain, but like not in Argentina. It isn't.
Definitely is not. It is a
It's a matter of national pride there.
revanchism or whatever it's called.
Return the Malvinas to us.
Malvinas. I'm Malvinas. I'm your fire. Your desire.
Which is a very 1990s, 80s thing right there too.
Yeah.
I forget when that song came out.
The Gulf War aesthetic is very unique as well, with all the chemical suits all the different nations had. Like the French, there's a French chemical suits with their FAMAS or whatever.
FAMAS, yeah, I love that gun.
The Saudi Arabian chemical suits are ridiculous. They look like, the guys that work in microchip factories, like the big, clear visor in front. It's just totally crazy.
Yeah, it's such a reflection of the time. Yeah, it's a reflection of how good the M1 Abrams is.
It's quite good.
And how good it is to bomb your enemies into submission, pretty much.
Yeah.
The F-117, the F-117, that like stealth jet.
Yeah.
They bombing stuff with the stealth jet. I like
And
that.
the Highway of Death, that was all nighttime stuff, right?
Yeah, and day, I think, too. I think they just bombed it all the time. Mm-hmm. Sort of like how the Ho Chi Minh Trail got really worked up.
Yeah. But the Ho Chi Minh Trail is a forest. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of hard to see people inside of it as opposed to a big, desert, wide open desert.
Good for seeing people in.
Yeah, especially if you've got like thermal optics and whatnot.
That's right. Yeah. No, it's Gulf War is a fascinating sort of footnote. We kind of forget about because of the second Gulf War.
Yeah, it has overshadowed it so much. It's so much more of a bigger war than this. This is a short victorious war in the truest sense.
Yeah, true.
Really.
And it may have blinded us in some sense as to how a war goes.
Yeah.
Because then right afterwards you have Somalia. Black Hawk Down in 93.
Mogadishu. Yeah. And that
did not go so well.
Did not go as well. No.
But yeah, not a whole lot of alternate history scenarios I can see.
And it's crazy to think of it as being technically part of the Cold War, but only very much technically.
Yeah, only technically. Really, the Cold War was... Well, I mean, I know a lot of people say the Soviet Union really ends in August of 91, not December 91, the formal dissolution. But really, does the Soviet Union really exist? Is the Cold War still going on after the fall of the Berlin Wall in 89? No.
Not really.
No.
Not in any
meaningful
way. It's just a name at that point.
Yeah. Oh, the Cold War. So much fascinating stuff from the Cold War.
Yeah. And then they dissolved the Soviet Union and made the CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States. Which included a lot of the same states, but not all of them. Not all of them.
Warsaw Pact goes away, the dodo.
Yeah.
See, I feel like it wouldn't be as intimidating if it had another name of another, country. Bucharest Pact. The Budapest Pact.
The Vilnius Pact.
Well, Vilnius, remember, is part of the Soviet Union at that point. It's Lithuania. So.
Yeah. That's right.
Bratislava Pact. The Prague Pact. The Tirana Pact.
The East Berlin
The
Pact.
Sofia Pact.
The Sofia Pact.
Yeah.
What's the capital of Albania?
Tirana.
Nice. Very good.
Gotcha, Max.
Got me. You got me good. But yeah, the Gulf War. Can you think of any Gulf War alternate history, or is it so minor it doesn't have anything?
I can't
really?
think of a single one.
Yeah.
I really can't. I mean, it's just not. I mean, it's also because, the Iraqis can't win.
They
We
cannot
should write it. We're going to do it.
Yeah, sure.
No, we've been talking about writing some stuff, Max. We should write it.
I think a war between Saudi Arabia and Iraq could be an interesting thing to think about politically on one hand and wargaming on the other hand. Because Saudi Arabia does not have a good track record of military victories. Just ask the Houthis. They've been fighting the Houthis forever. This war has been going on for the longest time.
Yeah, not come to an end, yeah.
Yeah. They're doing a very bad job of it. The Houthis shot like a World War II era Katyusha rocket and hit like this ridiculously expensive hydrofoil with like stealth technology and like all this stuff and sunk it with a single rocket.
Nice. Katyushas. Love a Katyusha. Like a Calliope, a Katyusha. Yeah, just randomly shoot rockets.
Stalin's organ.
Well, I think that's about it we have to say on this.
Yeah, I think that covers it. If y'all want to give us any suggestions or have any comments, just contact us at talknatehistory@gmail.com.
Have a good day, guys.